gave the commitment to be with us, and we thank him for coming بعد مشوار طويل يعني. All right, yalla, please have a seat. Yalla, yalla, yalla. All right. You guys, obviously, فين البايبل؟ Okay, beautiful. All right. These are exciting days.
It's not for me, yeah? To be enticed. Okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Ameen. I know Abuna was saying a lot of things, but then none of them are true. I went to Egypt just to eat kaizo. Abuna knows what kaizo is. They have amazing shawarma in Egypt. طبعا it's a sin to talk about shawarma during Holy Week or during Lent. But thank God we're all fasting, صح? Alhamdulillah. Chapter 46, Genesis. Where are you up to in the story? What happened in 45? I'm hoping you did 45 last week. Yes? Alhamdulillah. Who knows where we're up to? What happened in chapter 45? Anything? Kullu? Joseph told his brothers. What did he tell his brothers? That he is Joseph. And he did a little bit more than that. He actually did a lot more than that. More than telling them that he's his brother, that he's the brother. Yes? He forgave them. And he sent them back to Jacob to ask for all his family to come and be with him in Egypt. And at the beginning of chapter 6, we are learning about Jacob, or we are going to hear now, or we're basically walking into this story with Jacob knowing that Joseph, his beloved son, is alive and deciding what he's going to do. Because he has a predicament, and that predicament is he has to leave the land that was promised to his fathers, to Abraham and to Isaac, and to go to a different land, knowing that God had previously not liked this idea, even when there was a famine. So let's start reading chapter 46, Genesis 46. Is someone going to read for us, Keda, with a loud voice? Well, please.
So Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. And Joseph will put his hands on your eyes.
Let's stop there. What happened? We see or we hear something amazing. What did Israel do? Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God. Why Beersheba? انتوا حتبقوا interactive ولا كله كده هيقعد نايم؟ Yes. Beersheba was actually on his way to Egypt. So geographically, it meant sense to go to geographically on his way to Egypt. Beersheba looks like a good spot. But there's a much bigger reason why Jacob chose to go to Beersheba. Isaac built a well? Yes, that's the reason. That's how it was named.
After he went to Egypt.
Correct. And it's called Beersheba because that's where, and that's the actual town is called after the well. But why Beersheba? It was the last spot where God had spoken to Isaac, where God had appeared to Isaac. So what we see here is we see Jacob in a predicament. I want you to get one of the nicest way to study the Bible is to try and kind of go to a visit inside the head of the person that we're talking about. Okay? So here we're talking about Jacob. So I want all of us together to try and imagine that we enter inside Jacob's head. Now before we enter this head, I saw a pram here. Are there any parents other than Abuna and myself? Yes, there's a mama here. Anyone else? All of you are very young. But one day, and there's mama here as well. But they're going to understand, they are going to have a much better visual inside Jacob's head than a lot of you. The reason for that is, and this was said to me once by Abuna Shnuda. He said to me, you will never understand the type of love that exists between a father and a son, and a father and a daughter, obviously, a mother and a son, a mother and a daughter. It's a unique love. And that love, I could stand and describe it to you forever, but you're never going to understand it until you taste it. Jacob is a father who had many sons, but this specific son, Joseph, he loved a lot more. And that kind of love is much stronger than any love you have experienced, those who are not parents. If I want you to imagine, Keda, someone that you love so much. I'm sure many of you have someone that you love, maybe someone that passed away, someone that is away and you haven't seen them for a very long time. I want you to close your eyes, Keda, and think. All of a sudden, I'm going to come to you and say to you, that person whom you love so much, is alive and you can go see him. And I want you to think, what would your reaction be? Because I know for a fact, if this was my son and it was me that was being told this person whom you love so much is alive and you can go and see him, especially when I find out that the fact that he's alive is most likely miraculous. That's a miracle. Something from God. That's godly action or godly work that's happening for this son whom I thought was dead is alive. If you want to have a little bit of a sneak peek into how the Bible describes a father's love to us, I want you to think of the parable of the prodigal son. Because in the parable of the prodigal son, God actually gives us a little bit of a taste of what it is like for a father to be longing for his son. Those of you that go back and study this parable, you find there's a very small couple of words inside the verses while God is telling us this parable. Because when the prodigal son decides that living at home is much better than being a slave where he was, he says, I'll get up, I'll go back to my father, and I'll say to him, I've sinned against you and against heaven. Accept me as one of your hired workers. Now, if you read the Bible, you find that it says to you, while he was a great way afar, or while he was far, the father saw him and came running to him. Why is this important? Abuna, this is important because it means that the father every day went out to the road and started looking for his son. He was searching for this prodigal son. This son that said to him, Dad, I want to have nothing to do with you. I want to inherit you. Give me my inheritance. Give me my money. I don't love you. I hate you. On the contrary, I want to go and live on my own. I want to go and enjoy the world. The son that betrayed his father, the Bible tells us that while he was afar off, the father saw him, came running to him, fell on his neck, kissed him, and put the robe on him. And of those of you that want to see that a little bit more, Back then, I don't know if you've been to acreage around Dural or Glenhaven, or that's what the houses used to be like at the time of Christ. So for the father to see the son from the road, it means he left the house every day, walked along this very long driveway until he got to the road. It means that that father was longing for his son so much that he was spending all his day on the road waiting for the son to return, not knowing if the son is going to return or is not going to return. Here we have Jacob in exactly the same situation. And the fact that his son is still alive is miraculous. And being Jacob, it would have been very, very possible for Jacob to say, this is God's work. This is God telling me your son is alive. And he would have picked, I know if it was me, I would have picked up everything I had and started running. But that's not what Jacob does. On the contrary, first thing he does is he decides to go and ask God, what should I do? I don't know how many of us can be in this kind of circumstance and think, oh, I need to ask God. A lot of the times there's a lot of things that we want in our lives. In the minute we think they're happening, we run. No. Jacob, he teaches us what it means to be someone that is committed to his God. Someone who doesn't do anything without consulting God. Someone whom God comes first in his life ahead of anything else. And therefore, he decides to go to Beersheba because Beersheba is the last known place where God spoke to Isaac, his father, hoping that God would speak to him. And if you continue, it says, he didn't just go to Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to God. He comes to God and he says to him, God, you are what I seek more than anything else. And therefore, I offer you what I have. I love you. I love you more than my son, who's been years and years and years away from me, whom I loved very much and whom I thought was dead. So we see here an amazing lesson of what it means to be someone who's dedicated to God. He goes and he offers the sacrifices to God. And guess what God does? God rewards those who love him. Look at the reaction, verse 2, then God spoke to Israel. Straight away. God, seeing this kind of love, this kind of dedication, this kind of you are what is important in my life, always comes back with an automatic response. God spoke to Israel. And when you see God's response, it's actually quite amazing. God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. Now, if you notice Genesis, Moses, when he's writing this, God made a distinction and called the same person two names. Moses says that God spoke to Israel. Is Jacob's name here Israel or Jacob? Is this before or after Jacob wrestled with God? After by a lot. Yes. So Jacob's name has been Israel for a very long time. Then wouldn't you wonder why God called him Jacob, Jacob? Twice. Jacob, Jacob. And Jacob answers and says, here I am. The fathers tell us that God, he called Jacob by his old name, resembling humanity. It's like saying to you, man, man. Human, human. You of the fallen nature, you who is about to go to the land of sin. Because what's happening here, Jacob wants to know if he can go to Egypt or not. And Egypt, the fathers tell us, resembles the world of sin. And he's about to meet Pharaoh, who the fathers tell us resembles Satan. So here we find in God's speaking to Jacob, it's actually a message to all humanity, not just to Jacob. And this is why the fathers tell us that God chose the name Jacob, Jacob, and did not call him Israel. Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. I will go down with you to Egypt. In this vision is God's promise for the incarnation. Go down to Egypt, yes. Man, you are going to sin, and you are going to be exiled to the world, exiled into the world of sin. But I will come down to you. I will go with you. I will incarnate. I will empty myself. I will take on the form of man, and I will become man, and I will come and be with you there. You are going down for a war, yes. You are going down into the world of sin, yes. But I'll be with you. I am the one that's going to support you. I'm the one that's going to be the Lord, your strength, who will help you overcome Pharaoh, overcome Satan, and I will come back with you. And in this, there's two promises. The promise of the incarnation, but more importantly, the promise of salvation. You realize that this is the last time that God speaks with Israel. And the next time he speaks to him, do you know when he speaks to Israel again? Anyone? Guess? Next time God speaks, who's he going to speak to? Moses, absolutely. The next time he's going to speak to Moses in the burning bush, which will be, I'll be with you. I will use you as the Savior who's going to bring my people out of Egypt, out of the land of bondage, out of the land of Satan, to bring you back to the promised land, which is Canaan, the land of milk and honey, the promised land being the eternal Jerusalem for all of us. In this, the fathers say to us that this vision was not just a vision for Jacob, but it was a vision for the whole church. And this is why he says, Jacob, Jacob, that is, O humanity. And if you notice at the end, he says to them, I will make you a great nation. Now, do you know how many people went with Jacob? Believe it or not, the rest of the chapter, or most of the rest of the chapter, is giving us the count. Can we read? Can someone read?
Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock and their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. His sons and his sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Now these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar were Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, and Jahleel. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram with his daughter Dinah. All the persons, his sons and his daughters, were 33. The sons of Gad were Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Ezbon, Eri, Arodi, and Arelai. The sons of Asher were Jimnah, Ishua, Isui, Beriah and Sarah their sister, and the sons of Beriah were Heber and Malachiel. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin, and to Joseph in the lands of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ahi-Rosh, Mupin, Hupim, and Ard. These were the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The son of Dan was Hushim. The sons of Naphtali were Jahaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70.
Stop. How many people? 70. That's how many people, how big Israel was. The people of God were 70 people. 70 people leaving Canaan to go to Egypt. Now, that last verse, all the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70, is actually in the Septuagint, I'll say it correctly, translation, but wasn't in the original Hebrew translation. In the original Hebrew translation, it was just 66. And the church fathers tell us it's 66, but in the actual genealogy, we have Joseph and his 2 sons being mentioned, correct? So that's 3. 3 and 66 is 69. And Jacob himself, that's the 70. So in the Septuagint translation, which is what is accepted by our church, it actually means that the total was 70. Now, why is 70 a critical number? Why is 70 important? 7, huh? Yes? Complete numbers? Apostles? The sons of Noah, the family of Noah, was 70. Mentioned in the Old Testament. In Genesis chapter 10. The whole of the creation that came through Noah were 70 people. And it's as if God is saying, this is another beginning to creation. 70 who survived or who came after the flood. 70 are going into the world. 70 are going to 70 are going to go into the world and are going to be saved and resurrected. But when they're saved and they're resurrected, what is the promise that we have here from God? They are going to be a great heir, a great nation. How many were they when they left Egypt? Does anyone know how many Israel were? I don't have an exact number, so I'm glad no one tried to guess. But we are told that they were in the millions. In the millions. To the extent that Pharaoh and the people of Egypt disliked them and feared them. But that's how great a nation the church of the New Testament is going to be. And this was a promise to us as a church, that the church will become great and will resurrect from this world as a great nation, because God is going to incarnate and is going to also save us from this world. And this is the reason we have all these names listed, so that we know that there were a total of 70, which is the family of Jacob, or all of Israel at the time that they went into Egypt. Now, the next thing that happens, or the next thing that Moses goes out of his way to tell us in this chapter, is where Israel ends up settling inside the world. People of God, God has permitted for them to enter into the world. God has permitted for them to go to Egypt. God has permitted for them to enter the temptation and the tribulation of being slaves in Egypt, slaves in this world, waiting to be saved and waiting to be taken out of this world. But what we see in the last bit of the chapter is we're going to see a little bit of negotiation that happens between Joseph and Pharaoh. Because Joseph, knowing that his people were simple farmers, they were simple shepherds. And historically, the Egyptians didn't like the shepherds because they were always at war with the shepherds. And it could be that Joseph knew that this may become a problem for his family. But more importantly, the fathers tell us that God did not want Israel to live in the middle of the world, to live in the middle of Egypt. And this is why Joseph is going to go and he's going to negotiate for them to stay in the uppermost part of Egypt, which is the closest to the land of Canaan. Let's read. Can we continue?
Then he sent Judah before him to Joseph.
Sorry, I missed a bit. Yeah, I missed a few verses. Okay, let's go. Sorry, I'll explain that. Keep going.
Then he sent Judah before him to Joseph, to point out before him the way to Goshen, and they came to the land of Goshen. So Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he presented himself to him, and fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said to Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and say to him, My brothers and those of my father's house who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for their occupation has been to feed livestock, and they have brought their flocks, their herds, and all that they have. So it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and says, What is your occupation? That you shall say, Your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth, even till now, both we and also our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians.
So the bit that I missed first was the fact that Joseph ended up sending who ahead? He sent Judah. What do you think that resembles? Hey? So he resembles Christ. If Jacob resembles the church, Judah resembles Christ. And that means that Christ is the one that leads us in the land of our heir. The land that doesn't belong. The land of our estrangement. The land where we are captive. He is the one that leads us through this earth. He is the one that guides us. Here we have Judah as a guide that is preparing the way for the people of Israel as they go into this land of, which is not their land, the land of strangers, where they are strangers, they are sojourners in this land. Here the fathers tell us that this was a resemblance for us and God being our guide throughout this earth. And this is why as we finish the resurrection, we find Christ says to us, I am the way. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. He is our way. And this is why also we find St. Paul says to us, I have a desire to be with God, to depart and to always be with God. And this is what we always also say with Simeon, now my eyes have seen your salvation, allow me to go, allow me to be with you. After Judah leads the way, we hear what I was alluding to before is Joseph picking this land for his family. Now that you've heard what the negotiation that happened between Joseph and Pharaoh, why do you think that was necessary? Even though God permitted for the people of Israel to enter this land of occupation, or this land where they are going to become slaves, this land where they're going to be under the bond of Satan, who is the controller, who is the Pharaoh of this land. The church fathers tell us God did not want them to mix with the Egyptians. God did not want them to be affected by all the practices, the fact that they used to worship other gods. He didn't want them to be affected by that, and to keep them separated from the world. And this is why the church always says to us, you are not of this world. Keep yourself from this world. Separate yourself from this world. Try and live in this world, but live on the outer fringes of the world. Do not mix with the people of this world, because mixing them with them is only going to dilute your faith, is only going to make you lose your identity, lose who you are. And this is why God and Joseph, he wanted to protect his father, wanted to protect his household, wanted for them to stay in the occupation that was always theirs, which is that they are shepherds. And with that, he made this negotiation that they can live in Goshen, which is the uppermost land, always ready to go back to the land of Canaan. One of the beautiful things we read in the epistles of St. Paul is the only one that describes or that explains to us this desire that not only Jacob, but even Isaac, his father, had, and that they never lived in houses. They always lived in a tent. And the people of Israel always lived in a tent. Why tent? To realize that our life on this earth is a temporary life. Now St. Paul asks, why did Abraham, after God told him, you are in the promised land, you've arrived, and not just Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, all of them lived in tents. Some of you might say to me, Abuna, but there was no construction. There was no building at that time. No, there was. Because Lot comes before. Yes? If you look at the timeline. And at the time of Lot had to keep the doors shut, which means there were doors, which means there was buildings. So that means that Abraham could have constructed a house, but he chose to live in a tent. Only St. Paul explains that to us in the New Testament. He says to us, because he was waiting for the city, the promised land that has foundation. Was there a problem with the land of Canaan? Did the land of Canaan not have any foundation? No. But through faith, Abraham knew that the promised land was which one? Was the heavenly Jerusalem. And this is why he always lived ready to leave, ready to go home, ready to go to the heavens. And this is here, we see this happening again, that God chooses for the people of Israel to live in the part that is closest to their homeland, so that they can always be ready to leave, ready to go home, ready to go to the heavenly Jerusalem. And this is what we all need to do. It's very easy to mingle into the world. It's very easy to go and live in the city of Egypt, to even be part of Pharaoh's house. Very easy, but it's very hard to say, I'm not part of this world. I will live on the outer fringes. I will hold on to my faith. I will hold on to my traditions. I will hold on to my God. In everything I do, I will consult God before I do anything. And glory be to God forever and ever. I mean, that's chapter 46. I hope I did it any justice. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Abuna, so much. Before any reflections or questions, I want to just, it caught my attention, that last verse, Abuna, that it just speaks of the strength of this character, Joseph. How Joseph lived in the midst of Egypt, but wasn't tarnished by their ways at the time. But he was aware in wisdom about his own family that they could be at risk. So he really took care of them. It's interesting. He must have really struggled to keep his his character and his faith in the midst of all this horrible pagan worship and things like that. But anyway, for you guys now, if you have reflections, questions, please go ahead, share them with Abuna. Anyone got anything they want to clarify, ask? Yeah, Abadir. Abuna, the microphone is back with Utsak. Free question من Abadir. Go ahead.
The church goes out of its way to make us live a life that is different. It is very easy, like you said, to be sucked into the world. And as a matter of fact, the world now goes out of its way to take us over. It actually takes away from us everything. And Satan is very good at it. He keeps making new inventions that do nothing but take us away from being able to spend any time with God. This is nothing but a machine that takes away your time. And Satan at the moment, all he's taking away from us, a lot of people think he's taking other things. He's just taking time. And he does everything in his power to make sure that you have no time. And we live here in Egypt, in Australia. My head is still in Egypt. We live here still in Australia. And the big struggle we all have, if I was to ask anyone, Abuna, I don't have time. Abuna, I don't have time. Abuna, I don't have time. So we focus a lot on the world when all we need to do is focus on ourselves. The secret is not about the fact that we spend time in our jobs and that we interact with the people outside, etc., etc. The secret is in that I spend with God. If I can dedicate time to God and ensure that His time is not going to be taken away from me, then I will be okay in this world. Make sense? And this is why it becomes important. And Abuna, I'm sure within confession, he says to you, your spiritual rule. What's the spiritual rule for? It's for me to maintain that relationship with God. You know, Jacob sent Judah ahead of him. Same way that God says to us, I am the way. What I need to do is give God His time, and what He needs to do, guide me through this earth. For as long as I'm holding on to His hands, I'm fine. The minute I let go, because I don't have time, that's when I'm going to be in trouble. That's when I'm going to get lost in the world. And that's when all these beautiful desires that Satan keeps presenting to me, like a cake that is covered with beautiful cream, and he presents it to me as if it's a cake. But trust me, the minute you start biting from it, you realize what's inside is not chocolate. Something that looks like chocolate, that Satan camouflaged to make it look like a cake, and that is sin. He makes sin look delicious. But until you partake of the sin, you realize that all you've done is you partook of the air, of the pigs, which is exactly what happened with the prodigal son. Does that make sense? I hope I answered that. I'm sorry. يمكن أبونا يحب يزود حاجة.
Any would like anyone to ask anything else? Yeah.
Just a question. You know how you talked about the tents and how he had a tent so to remember God. How do we have tents in our life when we constantly go after stability in our lives?
Look, one of the beautiful things that we always know about, especially Joseph, the Bible tells us that God was with Joseph and Joseph was a successful man. There's nothing wrong with success. There's nothing wrong with being successful in His world. On the contrary, we are called to invest our talents. God has given each of us talents. Some of us have 1, some of us have 5, some of us have 10. But all of us are asked to invest it, which means we have to work very hard. to invest these talents and to give God fruit, to bring back. Those that took 5 need to bring back another 5. Those that took 10 need to bring back another 10. None of us can bury these talents. But the issue that happens is when I become addicted to the world. When all of a sudden this comes, the cost of my success is time with God. When the cost of my success is that I have no time to spend with God. And believe you and me, Satan always, nothing ever, will always present to you, success means you must work on Sunday. And those who are very, very strong in their faith, they'll say, I'll do anything but work on Sunday, because Sunday is the day of the Lord. And some of you might look at me and say, Abuna, you've got to use your brains. I'm not going to let go of a job just because you've said Sunday is the day of the Lord. It's up to you and it's according to your faith. But I have that faith. If I give God what is God, God is more than capable of giving me my needs. And therefore it becomes a relationship between me and God. The more I'm dedicated and the more I give Him His fair share, His time, I will be successful because He's with me. God was with Joseph and Joseph was a successful man. But I can't seek the success on account of God. That's the big difference. And most of the ones that lose their way away from God is they seek success at the cost of anything. Not just the cost of God, the cost of their families, sometimes their sons and daughters, sometimes their siblings, etc., etc., etc. Make sense?
Thank you, Abuna. Anybody else? What's you're a blessing مش هنسيبك. ربنا يخليك Abuna. Thank you, Abuna, very much. It was wonderful words of the Spirit, and we thank Abuna for coming and blessing us tonight. We'll pray, and then you can have Abuna will give you the honor, and then you're welcome to socialize in the hall. Again, we're praying for Mina and Mariana. On Saturday, the liturgy starts 7 a.m. استنى يا مينا استنى يا زول 7 a.m. we start. The bishops will come at 8 a.m. for the offering. So please come early before the bishops. God willing, we'll have Daniel with us and also have Elia with us as well. That's the plan at the moment. That's what we are of, God willing. And we thank Abuna Joshua actually for facilitating a lot of this work. All the ordinations and all the things that happen. He's sitting in the background working very hard, communicating with His Holiness and organizing all that. So we thank you, Abuna, Rabbina Awadak, and also preparing what happens in Egypt. God willing, when Mina arrives there, we'll take care of him. Please, Abuna, please don't let what happened to us happen to Mina. And this is not going to happen. For us, when we arrived to Egypt, we got there and we had Abuna Pablos. I had Abuna Arsenius and Abuna Sharabim with me. We're traveling. And Abuna Pablos with us. And he said, as soon as we arrive, there's a representation from His Holiness waiting for you in the airport to take you to see His Holiness. We're all very, very excited. So excited. We got to we landed in Egypt. There's no one there. Mina, this is not going to happen. Don't worry. Things are different now. And then we thought, you know what? Let's just go. Can you shut the live? Still on?